In this step, I will update my WordPress website's wp-config file and add the configuration for multiple identity providers. To be able to edit your site's wp-config file, you may need to get a local copy using your FTP client, or maybe your hoster is offering you a sort of file manager that also allows you to edit this file. In my case, I have a local copy here on my computer, and I've opened the wp-config file and I've located the line that reads add any custom values between this line and the stop editing line. Just below this line, I will add a definition for a new global named constant. And I do that by typing define, and I give that a name, which is WPO_IDPS_1. The 1 in the name of the global named constant that we are currently editing represents the block ID of the WordPress website that we are currently configuring. Under normal circumstances, when your site is a single site WordPress installation, this ID will be 1. If you're configuring WPO365 for a WordPress multi-site, however, then this ID may be different. But that's up to you to then decide what the ID is of the site that you are currently configuring. In our case, in my case, I'm configuring the website with the ID 1, and to complete it, I will add a comma and I add an empty array. Now I configured WPO365 to expect more than one IDP. However, I haven't added the configuration of those identity providers. Completing the configuration of my named constant is actually as simple as copying the exported data and adding it to my array that I defined in my wp-config file. And I can do that by copying the first, adding a comma, and then copying the second array of data. Now WPO365 should support multiple identity providers. So let's save the configuration and return to our WordPress admin. Let's refresh the page, and immediately I can see that something changed. There is a yellow bar informing me that multiple identity providers defined in wp-config will be used instead. So if I go to my single sign-on page, I now have a little bit of confusing situation that I see a configuration here, but actually that's not a configuration that is necessarily being used, because the configuration found in wp-config will be used instead. So what you can do to work around this is basically to go again to the import-export page and to actually delete the WPO365 configuration. This will delete the configuration from the database, but not the configuration that is found in your wp-config file. Now with the configuration deleted, I can return to the single sign-on page, and to avoid confusion, I can actually check the option to obfuscate the Azure AD options. And when I do that, most of the Azure AD options that are visible to me as an administrator get grayed out, and their values get set, well, basically to placeholder values. Let me save that configuration, and with this configuration in place, I have configured support for multiple identity providers, and I can see that immediately already on the plugin self-test page, because here I can now select one of 2 identity providers for my self-test. But that's subject of the next step, where I will test my configuration.